Today we're going to show you how to change the springs on an extra large Plexador. So you should have received an extra large replacement spring kit. That's going to include the printed directions and these parts. The springs and some of the spring assembly pieces that need to be replaced, and a grease packet. To do this spring change, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the pet door, and a 1/4-inch nut driver to remove the spring hood covers. You can also use a flathead screwdriver for this. A pair of small vice grips or a locking pliers. And very important, a 1/8 inch Allen wrench. Alright, before we start to change the springs, we're going to need to remove the extra large Plexador from wherever it's installed, in a door or a wall. And to do that, mine's already been removed, but to do that you're going to remove the 4 Phillips head screws that hold the frame in place. So unscrew those, the dog door should pull right out of the hole. If it doesn't, check the edges of your frame for a bead of caulk. Sometimes the installer will put a bead of caulk around the edge, and if there is caulk, use a dull knife and release it along the edges, and then pull the pet door out of the hole. Alright, so you're going to need to find a way to prop up the pet door. I have a stand here, but you might have to put it on a chair, have someone assist you to hold it upright. You're going to need to remove the spring hood. These are the 2 spring hoods. You can use a flathead screwdriver. I have a 1/4-inch nut driver. I'm just going to remove them. Should come off very easily. That exposes the complete spring mechanism, so we can then check it and replace it. So now we've removed the spring hood cover, and this is the spring that's not operating properly. If you pull on the panels in and out, you can see that the top spring tail is intact. So that part's not the broken part, it's the bottom spring tail that snapped off right here. And that's why the dog door that side won't close properly, not come closed properly in both directions. So our next step is going to be to remove this spring assembly and install the new one. Alright, now that you've removed the spring hood cover, I've used my vice grips and I've locked them on here to the anchor strip and the bent arm. You'll see those parts listed in the printed instructions if there's any confusion. And now I'm going to use the Allen wrench and unscrew the screw. So I go left to the left, counterclockwise, to undo the screw. Once you get past the first turn, it should be very easy. So go use that and remove the spring screw completely. So now that we've removed the screw spring, I'm going to take off my vice grips, loosen them, take it off, and I'm going to use them to remove the rest of this spring assembly. And you might be able to do it without it. I usually start with it because it can be sometimes difficult. Now these ones are coming off easy. So first thing to come off is the bent arm. Next, to remove the spring. Alrighty, so there I've removed the white tube spacer. Finally have the flat washer and the shoulder washer. Now, so that's what the shoulder washer looks like. And you've got a new one in your kit. We're going to want to put new ones back on. Before we get to putting the new things on, just look at the spring area, and if it's got grease and dog hair and dirt, clean it up. Use a little warm dish liquid if needed, a little warm water and dish liquid to clean it up if you need to, because you don't want that area to be all gummed up. So the next thing we're going to do now is we are ready to reassemble. We're going to start with the new shoulder washer, and it goes down into the hole that's in the frame. Press it down firmly, press it down in there firmly, seat it. Then take your flat white washer that goes on top of there, actually no, sorry, step up, back a step. Next on is your white nylon tube spacer. That goes in next. Now place the white flat washer over the white nylon tube. And now we're ready to put the spring on, and you'll notice in your directions that it tells you, if you look at the spring, you'll see that one of the tails has a slight upward curve, just ever so slight. So this is the slight upward curve. That goes on the bottom. All right, so that's going to be on the bottom. And this bottom spring tail goes in front of this anchor post, and this one is going to be wrapped around and go behind. So I'm going to use my needle nose pliers, and be careful when you do this that it doesn't pop back up at you. So you use the needle nose pliers and wrap the spring tail. We call it charging the spring. It has to go over this post. And I have mine is set up kind of high, so that might be easier for you. I have mine set up high so that I can film this. Now see, I've got it on there, but it looks like it's ready to snap off, so I'm going to use my needle nose pliers to try and seat it properly. There. All right. So the next thing to put on is going to be your bent arm. This is what the bent arm looks like. And the bent arm sits down, and if you look down at the top of your spring, you'll see there's two little pieces that fit into here, two little ends that stick up. The bent arm goes in between, and it lines up with the anchor post. So I've got this in position, but my spring is pushing upward. So I'm going to use the end of my nut driver just to tap this down over my. All right, so when you're putting the bent arm down into position, make sure the panel is lined up straight, or you'll have a hard time doing that. Okay, so now that it's seated, now we're going to go ahead. We need our internal tooth washer that came with our kit, and the new spring screw. Okay, so the internal tooth washer goes down first. And then we put screw into position. We do have to put the vice grips back on, because as you tighten this down, the door panel is going to want to flip open, and whatever position is the final tightening position for that spring screw, that is where the door panel is going to come back to each and every time. So it's important to have the vice grip in position and nice and tight as we tighten down the screw. All right. Alright, now you're going to feel the spring start to tighten. Hold on to the vice grips. Tighten it as much as you can, but you don't have to really crank down on it, but you want it to be nice and secure. Alright, so that's good right there. Then you want to do a test. Remove your vice grips. Alright, now that the spring is seated and tightened and all ready to go, we want to test it to make sure that it's in the right position, because the spring, where it's located right now and how it's tightened and lined up, that's going to determine how the panel opens and closes and where it comes closed to. So to test it, open the other side and remove it, not remove it, but hold it open, and then push your panel and see, does the panel swing back to center? And it does. So that is correctly done. We've got it set correctly. So now we're going to apply grease from our grease packet, because you do want to, the grease is really important. In fact, you may want, here's the grease packet. If you had an older kit, you might not have received a grease packet. You can use axle grease, so water resistant axle grease, or you can use white lithium grease. These are both readily available, but the newer spring kits come with the grease that we use in the factory, which is a water resistant axle grease. So you're going to use this grease and liberally grease this spring. At the same time, you probably want to wipe down the other spring, which is still in place, but it may be older, so wipe it off, wipe any dirt and grime off of it, and put a nice new layer of grease on it as well. So I'm going to show you, you can use a paintbrush, you can use your finger, you can use a paper towel. So just open your little spring grease. And I'm just going to use my finger. This is non-toxic, so it's not a danger. The nice thing about using a paintbrush is you can get a little bit down in there as well. But so liberally greased, and now you're good to go. You can put your spring hood cover back on. But as I said, clean and grease the other spring. Just wipe it down and put new grease on it, and reinstall the dog door. You should be good to go.